Thank you, Chris. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Talking to you actually from not in South Devon, but actually in the middle of Devon. I'm actually based just outside Crediton, but our main operation is based in the south of Devon. So absolutely wonderful. First thing to say really is thank you so much for inviting me along today, and it's a real privilege to be here, and we love working with the Aonbs, and I've been, as you can tell from the grey hair, around in this sector for a number of years, and it's always lovely working with Aonbs across the country. It's a fantastic network. I wanted to chat you through field trips. Actually, I'm glad the theme is field trips, because I wanted to take you on another virtual field trip if you're willing to come with me today. A few videos of what we get up to and the sorts of things that have been happening for us, leading to ecological restoration and rewilding. But first of all, I'd just like to share with you a few slides just to begin that kind of process. So here we are. Hopefully you can see that. So my name is Simon Roper, and as Chris said, I'm a director of Aonb Limited. It's a not-for-profit company that is actually 20 years old now, involved in nature conservation training. And we do that two ways. We do it at residential programs at our farm in South Devon, and also through distance learning, online learning. And we've got involved in this thing called rewilding, or what we might call nature recovery, or we might call ecological restoration, or even perhaps in some cases sustainable farming, all sorts of different terms referring to making space for nature. And I wanted to take you on a particular example, which is the one that we're involved with in South Devon on the Sharpham Estate today. A few videos to show you later. I wanted to set the context, and you'll hear me talking about the stakeholders involved, and the location, and various examples of projects. I wanted to show you a little bit about the vision that we have for our site in South Devon, the wildlife monitoring and the interventions, and to talk a little bit about the particular business model that's working for us as a nature conservation training organisation, and the role of adults with learning difficulties with whom we share our tenancy, and their role in ecological restoration. And sort of leading through, is this a model for the future? Could this work for you? Could you take elements from it that might be of interest? And then leading on just at the end to talk a little bit about the Devon Rewilding Network, which emerged partly by accident, really, over the last 6 months, and just introduce you to the Devon Rewilding Network to see if that might be of interest as well. So as we go through, you'll hear various different things. I just wanted to introduce them to you before we go into the videos. You'll hear us talk about Lower Sharpham Farm, which is where Aonb is based. It's 80 acres of ground, and we've been there for about 8 years on a tenancy from the Sharpham Trust, which is an educational charity. Some of you may have come across it, based on the Sharpham Estate in South Devon. So you'll hear us talk about Lower Sharpham Farm, and then you'll hear us talk about Home Farm, which is the 50 acres that we took on relatively recently, about 18 months ago, and started to rewild. I use that word broadly. You'll hear me talk about the Sharpham Wild for People project, which is a lottery-funded project that really has allowed us to integrate people into the landscape changes that we're seeing down on the farm. I should just say that some of the videos I'm about to show you were recorded for an international audience. So please bear with me with some of the references. When we talk about being in the UK, you'll understand it was originally recorded for an international audience. And I'd like to show you a couple of clips of video talking specifically about sole bunting restoration, which has been happening as part of our work on the farm. Just a quick orientation. I'm sure you're all familiar with the county. Here we are, look down on the River Dart, just south of Totnes. That's the location we're going to be heading to in a moment. And on the Sharpham Estate, these are the two holdings that we'll be discussing. So we have Lower Sharpham Farm, which is our tenancy that we've had for about 8 years. And as I said, about 18 months ago, we added Home Farm to that, which has come out of intensive milk production for Sharpham cheese. And some of you may have come across Sharpham wine, which is another output from the estate. Not us, we're just tenants, but we've taken what was the milk production facility, and we're looking at the landscape restoration around that. So that's where we're kind of heading. Let me just stop that screen share for a moment and take you, if I may, to the first video, which talks about the context and the stakeholders. Okay.
We're here on the Sharpham Estate in South Devon, in the southwest of England. And this is an ecological restoration or rewilding project that has many different stakeholders. So I'm talking to you now as Aonb Limited, a not-for-profit company that's involved in nature conservation training. And we are tenants on the Sharpham Estate, which is a charity that supports connection with nature. So they are our landlords. Within that context, we're in a historic landscape, and a landscape that is has a recognition for a history going back to the 1700s as a particular sort of landscape, and also, of course, has an ecological value. So there are two organisations, Historic England and Natural England, that both have interests in this area of land. And then on top of that, we are in a protected landscape, which is an area of outstanding natural beauty, known in the UK as an Aonb. So again, another organisation that's a stakeholder in what we're doing here. Our trainees are also stakeholders, because they come here on a residential programme and they help us with the wildlife monitoring. So this is a very mixed stakeholder environment that also involves the local community. We are literally about 20 minutes walk away from a major town, the town of Totnes, and there are people that come here walking. So again, more stakeholders involved. And part of what we're doing as this ecological restoration programme or rewilding is to involve those stakeholders in this project, which is making space for nature. So the importance of taking over, we've just taken over this area of land, to move it into organic production and also to reduce the grazing pressure and the ground and promote the biodiversity, increase the biodiversity, because at the core of what we do, nature conservation training, we need to show our trainees that very biodiversity. Without it, we can't function as an organisation.
So the next thing I'd like to show you is a little bit about the project Wild for People. This is the next video that I'd like to show you.
Welcome to the Sharpham Estate in South Devon. This is the first anniversary of Wild for People. Year one has been absolutely amazing. We've seen recolonisation from the adjacent land of crickets and bird species appearing in greater numbers. And the next phase as we move on will be to create an environment in which even more species can return. Part of what we're doing to the land is actually just leaving it alone, not grazing it, not interfering in any way, not putting any chemicals on it, just letting it settle. And as a consequence, what we're seeing is a greater abundance of seed producing flowers and plants, and also a greater abundance of insects. Because of that, we're seeing more birds that feed on those things, and because of that we are seeing more birds that actually feed on the birds that are feeding on those things, and that's been really exciting to observe. Rewilding is about making space for nature and wildlife. Imagine the view behind me as a silken tapestry made up of threads, cross threads. Each one of those threads represents an individual species. What's been happening over many, many years is that we have been losing species, losing threads one by one. At first it doesn't affect the tapestry, but eventually it will. Eventually the tapestry will collapse. We're at the point now where we can do something about this. We can actually re-thread some of those threads. We can bring back those species. That's what rewilding is about. That's what Wild for People is doing. That's what we're doing here on the Sharpham Estate. As we go into this year, 2021 and beyond, visitors to the Sharpham Estate will see an impact. There's going to be new fencing introduced so that we can allow eventually stock to roam across the estate. There will be level crossings introduced along some of the public pathways. The level crossings will be set in favour of the grazing animals so that they have free rein right the way across the land that we're looking after. This is really important, and we're going to be asking people to, as they come to those gates, to go through, open, close them behind you as you go through, because it's really important that the animals are allowed to roam as they wish. Sharpen Wild for People project is about engagement with the local community and a wider audience. Part of that is about engaging citizen scientists. So everybody can play a role in helping us record the wildlife across the estate. And that's what's going to be rolling out in the next year and beyond. The fantastic thing about this year has been witnessing that increase in species abundance across the site. We're very excited about that, but we're on a journey. And this is part of a rewilding program which feeds into a national picture. So increasingly now, rewilding is becoming a phrase that's being used and a technique that's being used to make space for nature across the UK. And we on the Sharpham estate here are part of that.
Okay, so I hope that kind of gave you a bit of a dive into the Wild for People project, some of the funding that we've been able to access in order to progress this restoration. What I'd like to share with you now is a visual representation of the vision. We put together a vision of what might happen to the land. And I'll just share this very briefly with you. So this is what the landscape looks like when we took it on, and we're trying to imagine 10 years or more down the line. And so we did a visual impression and working with one of our team to create this difference, the scene that you see before you changing. With the introduction of grazers and browsers and potentially disruptors, but very much on a lower scale, allowing nature to bounce back, you'll see it's visually it's a slightly more disrupted, slightly scruffier vision, where edges don't become edges, they become blurred. I'm sure you're familiar with the kind of thing. We just wanted to give people a visual impression, what it is now versus what it might be in the future. And this was our first attempt at that, looking as you are now across the registered parkland landscape. So this was potentially our vision for what it might look like, although we're not going to be held to anything because it's experimental. We're going forward now to see what's going to happen, and that's part of the excitement of it, is to discover what happens next. Moving from there, I wanted then to show you what it might look like in terms of a business model. So what does this actually look like? And I just wanted to share this particular video with you, looking at our Aonb business model.
We wanted to share our rewilding journey over the past year here on the Sharpham estate in South Devon. Our rewilding is set on 50 acres of historic listed parkland within the South Devon area of outstanding natural beauty. It's a highly visible, sensitive and accessible landscape where nature and culture are married together. Farmland that has been in intensive agriculture with improved and semi-improved pasture prevail, where the heritage and the ecology of the land has been in a degraded state. So on the 1st of April 2020, we started rewilding at Sharpham. Our approach has been to marry up the heritage and the ecological values and engaging the different and multiple stakeholders. We're running a diversified rural business. For Aonb, that means nature conservation training, but it also means that we need to access income from the land, and for us, that's countryside stewardship. But this is a model that others can also follow, and it's important for us to be trialing these and showing these examples where others can follow. The partners in our program are United Response, who offer adults with learning difficulties, well-being opportunities, and Sharpham Trust as our landlord. And so with this partnership, we've been able to access National Lottery Heritage Fund grant support through the Sharpham Wild for People project. So what does rewilding actually look like for us? Well, firstly, we're going to remove all the internal fences so stock and wildlife can freely roam across the whole holding. This connects the pasture and make a perimeter fence to ensure that it's stock proof. This also means that the general public can be safe in and around the livestock and can be part of the rewilding experience. Our organic livestock will be made up of grazers and browsers and disturbers. We'll be restoring the historic viewpoints and a collapsed bridge on the estate, as well as replanting 141 trees in their original locations. So year 2 will see the bridge restored and the viewpoints opened. We'll be looking to introduce small numbers of mixed livestock and ensure their welfare is high through a programme of monitoring and checking by United Response Team. We'll be working with lots and lots of different people. Our trainees will be surveying and monitoring the land. Weekly volunteering days will start up as well, where we'll be planting trees and building tree guards, as well as improving access and interpretation. So please join us on our rewilding journey. Follow us online or on social media where you can find out about the opportunities to engage.
There again, just moving through our particular business model, which is about the nature conservation training, just giving you a little bit of an oversight about how that might work. Excuse me. So I then wanted to move on, if I can get this right, and just talk a little bit. Let's just share this one. Here we go. So this is the first year of restoration.
This is home farm in winter 2019, before we began our rewilding journey. We can see a celebrated landscape, but with conventional farming dominating the scene, the land is ecologically restricted. The grassland is flat and homogeneous, and there are limited places for wildlife to be. So, let's zoom ahead through 1 year of rewilding. As you can see, there's been quite a change. In the absence of grazing, which is our strategy in the initial phases of rewilding, the composition is starting to alter. There is more three-dimensional structure to the vegetation and rougher field margins. Some species, such as tussock-forming grasses and voles, are really starting to flourish. In all, there is more space for wildlife. Through the summer months, grasses and herbs have grown up and flowered and given a wonderful feeling of release and renewal. The fields have been buzzing with insect life, jumping with grasshoppers and crickets. We've seen more specialist farmland birds making use of seeds, insects and new perches on tall vegetation, most notably stonechat, linnet and goldfinch. We now regularly see barn owls and kestrels feeding on voles in the open fields, where we have never seen them before. The land already feels wilder, more alive and richer in wildlife. In all, it's been an inspiring, rewarding and reassuring first year.
So then just setting that video, then just setting the kind of context of what we've observed over the first year. And I think there's a point here that relates to our trainees on the farm, the young people that come, particularly just post-university. They've got the knowledge and understanding. They're looking for the skills in order to get jobs in nature conservation. And actually, there's a lot of talk, isn't there, about ecological crisis, climate crisis, which can be a shade depressing. And I think one of the great things about this kind of nature restoration is that it gives people hope, and it shows that things can happen in a relatively small time frame. And I think that's a very useful thing for young people to engage with because of that hope. So I just wanted then just to come to a little bit about how we involve adults with learning difficulties on our farm. I mentioned it at the beginning, and there's a short video recorded by my colleague Jack here that just talks a little bit about that and their involvement on the farm.
Welcome to our farm here in South Devon, where we are rewilding 50 acres of our holding in partnership with a wonderful charity called United Response. We're Aonb Limited and we're interested in nature conservation training, and we partner with United Response on the farm, who support adults with learning difficulties. Around 100 service user days a week are run from the farm, non-residentially, so the guys come in every day, around 20 or 25 per day, and they engage in a series of activities. And now that we've fully embraced rewilding here, we're able to sort of introduce and frame a lot of the activities that we run with the United Response guys around rewilding and ecological restoration. We have a conservation group who carry out simple wildlife surveys that help gather data. So it might be that they do an earthworm survey where we're digging earthworms, or a butterfly survey. We also check our wildlife boxes, and we have a number of bird boxes under a national scheme where we check the nesting viability of birds in the boxes.
Been doing 57 bed boxes.
57 bird boxes we did this morning.
This morning.
Yeah, it's been fantastic.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And recently we made a number of kestrel boxes. We saw decent numbers of kestrels hunting over the rewilding area. What we really wanted to do is put up some boxes so that they've got some areas where they can nest. And the other example, I suppose, that we're engaging, we're able to engage the service users from United Response with is around camera trapping and catching wildlife images. So being able to set cameras on paths that we know wildlife are using, corridors that wildlife are using, is really great. And we're getting lots of different, sort of perspectives or lots of different ideas from the service users about where the cameras are best placed and what the best story is that we can then tell. But it's not just about the conservation as well. We can frame a lot of the activities of the farm and the holding and the experiences and the well-being that the service users need to take from their time at the farm with us around ecological restoration. So for instance, we have livestock that are grazing or browsing or rootling around on the holding, and they need regular checking, daily checks, sometimes twice a day. And so the service users who are coming here really love animals and really feel a responsibility for looking after our animals.
Right, and this afternoon we've come to see the pigs.
To see pigs, water.
They love hanging out over there.
Hang out everywhere.
And yeah, it's been really great.
It'd be great.
So these ways in which we're working with United Response and they're working with us and helping us with our programme is really sort of interactive, really interdependent, and allows us to connect with a really wide audience. And one of the ambitions of us here working at this wonderful estate in Sharpham in South Devon.
Okay, so you can see that you now, I hope, got a feel for the various different elements of what we do. So the service users, the nature conservation training, and the elements of ecological restoration that's happening actually on the ground. So I think there's one last video that I wanted to show you about, if this is the right one, it is.
Hello, my name's Jack Skuse and I'm a director of Ambios. You've seen from today's field trip how ecological restoration for us plays out on a small scale and involves multi-stakeholders. For us at Ambios, it also sits centrally to our business. And so for this piece of the field trip, I wanted to share with you how that works. Ecological restoration, as I say, is fundamental to our economy and our business model. It also connects us with people at many different levels, from trainees and volunteers to people within our care community and their families and staff, as well as other members of our community. And so ecological restoration links fundamentally with our business and with our communities. And in our business, at our scale, we feel that there is an opportunity for others to learn from that. And so it becomes a scalable model. And I wanted to touch on a little bit about how that business works and how we've shaped or framed ecological restoration within the center of our business. So ecological restoration in and of itself has its own economy attached to us here in the UK. Our grant subsidy scheme for environmental measures called Countryside Stewardship is something that we've embraced fully on our holding, and right across the 50 acres our land is under a parkland restoration scheme which we've been able to negotiate with some of our stakeholders, Natural England and Historic England, to be able to fund some of this restoration works. We also have economy around some of the sales of our livestock. Our main business is around nature conservation training, and that plays out in different ways. And so having a restored ecosystem on a parkland farm, which was ecologically degraded as well as historically and culturally degraded, means that we have a rich learning environment for trainees to come and study and survey and gain skills, fundamental skills for a career in nature. One of our previous trainees called it a nature boot camp. And so a lot of the trainees will hopefully go on to working in our sector within NGOs, within government bodies and so on. We offer 12-week fully residential placements, and our 8-bed bunkhouse provides placements 4 times a year. This for us makes it sustainable and repeatable because we have occupancy year-round. We're also able to reach out to a wider community through our online courses. A lot of that is delivered from our farm here. And there are opportunities to connect with universities and offer residential field trips as well. So a lot of people engagement throughout the main centre of our business, and this translates to a partnership we have with United Response, and you've seen the nature of that in a previous part of today's field trip. A national charity, United Response, support adults with learning disabilities, where we provide a day service. So this is a part of our USP, part of our unique selling point for our trainees and the people who we engage with to connect with a different community, a different audience in which to interact and to engage with nature and the restoration of our land. And it also networks into our local community, so firmly embeds ecological restoration within our community. And so I think overall we framed and shaped our business around ecological restoration, where the economy and the engagement, where a lot of the livelihoods from the staff, from the service users, from our trainees, and from people living within our communities are able to benefit from ecological restoration. Where others on a small, medium scale can also model and shape and look to diversify their economies in order to embrace ecological restoration and the need for ecological restoration, and to see that as being a sustainable, viable enterprise for land management here in the UK. And so we see it as being a model, an example of a small, independent and also sustainable business, which is founded on ecological restoration, that we hope is a model for others. Thank you very much.
Okay, so that is the context of where we are working and how we are working in our particular stakeholder environment. And we launched this restoration of the 50 acres 18 months ago, and with a live event, because it was pre-COVID. Lots of people came to Sharpham House, and we were able to talk to people about it. And what emerged from that was a conversation about, was there a network out there across the county who might be interested in this? Were there others that were interested in hearing, interested in contributing, others that had really good ideas, interested in sharing? And we landed up as Ambios kind of in a position where I think that sort of there was an idea of who would volunteer, and you know, everybody stepped back, and we found ourselves the only people stepping forward. So we landed up just launching the network, and with some great support from Woodland Trust. There we go. So I just wanted to introduce the Devon Rewilding Network to you very, very briefly. It was launched week beginning 14th of June with some wonderful support from the Woodland Trust and from Rewilding Britain. It runs on a platform, online platform called Mighty Networks, and it's really a notice board for events, stories and news at this time. Quite remarkably, it now has 220 members, which we're delighted about, and you may already be a member, and if you're not, then I'd welcome you to go and have a look for it online. We did a quick census of some of our members some time ago, and the interesting thing, and I think the really rich thing about this, is that not everybody owns land. We were really keen to have a network that reached out to lots of different people from lots of different backgrounds, particularly interested in those that are involved in education and research and well-being, as well as landowners. And you can just see on this slide just the about 25% indirectly involved in what we might call rewilding or ecological restoration, 56% small landowners, so less than 50 hectares. So that was really interesting. A few larger landowners as well, which is great. So a really diverse membership, and it's growing almost day by day, which again, very exciting. We are at the moment promoting news and events and positive stories from across the county, and we're planning to do how to do things, how to get started information sheets, and we're planning to do site visits when we get back to physical site visits, which are now upcoming. First one planned for November, in fact, and networking opportunities. In fact, tomorrow we're doing an online session about seagrass, which is this kind of green ecological restoration, blue ecological restoration, if you like. The marine environment is launching lunchtime tomorrow. We've had already a couple of people who've done what we call network takeovers, where they actually have the network for 3 days and they can post information about what they're doing, and that's proving very successful both for them and for the membership. We've had some really great feedback. We're working on information sheets, as I mentioned earlier, and site visits. So that, in essence, is the Devon Rewilding Network. It's part of a system, a collaboration of a number of different networks that are now emerging across various counties, and they're supported, of course, under the umbrella of Rewilding Britain. So this appears to be gathering momentum, and we're really interested in the fact that it's gathering momentum within the county of Devon.